need to update the facility plan. So I'll just talk through a little bit about our process and what the recommended upgrades are, and then we'll have some time for public comment and any questions. So a little background. The main issues that were addressed in the plan are the inability to meet that maximum day of water demand, and as part of that, the thing that we were talking about earlier is that additional capacity to be able to rinse a filter with fresh water instead of, or with clean water, filtered water, instead of water from the creek, which is how it's had to be done now. There's not enough capacity to supply water to the system, filtered water to the system, and rinse a ripening, or a filter that's just been cleaned with filtered water. So we'll talk about that more in just a minute. There are also a few system pressure limitations up at the higher elevations. The minimum pressure requirement by the state is 40 psi, and you're just under that at a few locations, so that's one of the things that will be addressed. The storage facilities are aging and need some attention, and then the distribution system, as I'm sure most of you are aware, has some aging components that need to be addressed as well. Yes?
I see a minimum. Is there a maximum?
There is a maximum.
And are we exceeding that?
Yes, but you're addressing the, you're not exceeding that because you're handling that with pressure reducing valves. So the goals of the overall system were to be able to provide that maximum day supply while meeting the filtration rates that are required by DEQ, meeting that minimum service pressure throughout the system, and then ensuring that they're provided, the city is providing safe drinking water at a reasonable rate.
No, never know.
This is just an outline of the city. This was the boundary that was used for our planning purposes. So we made the assumption that in the planning life, in the planning life of the document, the city will not expand beyond these boundaries. So this is kind of the crux of the issue here that we're talking about. You've currently got two existing sand filters. So one sand filter can get you about 85 gallons a minute, which is this green line right here. And this is in million gallons, so it's a little bit confusing. This is about 85 gallons a minute. Both sand filters together get you twice that much, so 170. In 2009, this is an average, these numbers are monthly data. So all of the days of the month water use averaged over the 30 days of the month. So you can see you're getting pretty close to this peak capacity. And this line down here is what we would call firm capacity. And this is the number that we're shooting for. We want to have one reliable, redundant unit available. So if you had a significant catastrophic failure of some sort, you would have a backup. Right now, if you have a failure of one of your filters during these peak months, you're not able to provide adequate water to your city or to your system. So this is the big problem that was outlined in the report from DEQ and where we're at with everything. This is to talk about storage just a little bit. This is what the daily flow looks like for a system. So here's kind of the average for the whole day. At 6 o'clock in the morning, water use is at its highest for most communities, and then it bumps up again in the evening when people come home from work. So this volume of storage that you need here, this is your available supply line. Your supply needs to be able to meet at least this number. You need to have storage available to meet the volume to get to this, we call this peak hour time here. So this is a chunk of storage that's an important part we'll talk about in a minute.
Can I
Sure.
do that for you?
Oh, sure. That's this enter button right here, yeah. So the city currently has 197 connections. This ERU number is equivalent residential units. So that's basically a number of residential units you have in your system. And your peak day demand in 1998? 2009? 2009 was 182 gallons a minute, which is above that 170 gallons a minute number that you can safely supply, meeting that filtration requirement. And again, your firm capacity is only 85 gallons a minute, leaving you a deficit of 96.5 gallons a minute. As we project forward, we've assumed that during this build-out of this plan, that if each empty lot within the city built out at one residential connection, you would have 245 residential connections. And assuming the peak day or the maximum day rate moved forward, that would take you to 211, you would need 211 gallons a minute, which would put you at a deficit of 125 gallons a minute. What we've been talking about over the last year is that the fact that you have added meters to your system should have a pretty significant difference in this peak day number. And what happens is, as you install meters, a couple of things happen, and you've already found some of them. You find a lot of leaks that you didn't know you had, which decreases that maximum number quite a bit. And people start paying more attention to not only their personal leaks, but their personal water use. So their water use goes down. So generally, water use after meter installations reduce between 15 and 30% overall for a system. So we've made an assumption that the water use will go down 20%, which we think is a pretty conservative assumption. And as we project forward, that would take your peak day to actually less than your peak day has been, about 169 gallons a minute, which leaves you at a deficit of just about one filter, 83.5 gallons per minute. I'm ready. So in order to meet that additional demand, you need to get, well, actually, and this number was wrong, that depends on the average day. You would need less water than at the peak day, but you need this 85.5 gallons a minute to meet that reliability requirement. So we looked at a couple of options for doing that. We looked, the state requires that we look at a no-action alternative. So what happens if we don't do anything to add filtration? Keep going the way we're going. It would mean water rationing and lots of headaches for Marty and Christy and Paul. The second new option we looked at was just a new slow sand filter. And then the third option we looked at was a new slow sand filter plus some control improvements and some improvements within the building that were addressed in that plan from DEQ. We talked about some of those cross connections and metering things that we talked about. So the recommended alternative is the slow sand filter plus those control improvements. So we can get all of that addressed. And the storage component, you have an existing tank that's 100,000 gallons, and then you have about 30,000 gallons of storage available in your chlorine contact basin, because only a portion of that contact basin is required for chlorine contact time. So I didn't stick, oh, I did. The needs in here, for fire and emergency storage, you need about 120,000 gallons. And then that equalization storage we talked about to get you from the average day up to the peak hour, from the, the maximum day up to the peak hour flow, that's about 40,000 gallons, which is for a total of 160,000 gallons.
You've taken into consideration the amount of storage in the pipes,
We do not.
because there is some.
There is some. It would be tough to look at it just because it would vary so significantly over the system. But yes, there is some. So the storage options we looked at were, again, the no action alternative, which would leave you where you are now, which is okay, just with an aging system and minimum storage available. We looked at a new 100,000 gallon tank and relining the existing tank, which would give you an additional 100,000 gallons. And then we also looked at a new 200,000 gallon tank. And both of these say with booster station, that tank will be just a little bit taller than your existing tanks to meet those minimum pressure requirements that we talked about up at those upper elevations. So because of costs, the recommended alternative here is a new 100,000 gallon tank and relining the existing tank. The distribution system, I don't know if you'll know, you have about 26,000 feet of pipeline in your system and about 17,000 linear feet of steel line, most of which I think was installed before 1980. So steel line tends to corrode over time and gets pretty brittle and break, especially at higher pressures. And I think you guys have had a lot of maintenance history with your lines. So the options we looked at here were the no action alternative, and this note obviously goes with the next system, or with the next, no. The backbone line replacement is looking at the 4-inch lines and larger steel lines was to replace the backbone system. And then the system looping is actually adding some additional piping on the outside of the system, which would improve fire flows throughout the system. And again, because of costs, the recommended alternative here is to replace those backbone lines and get rid of some of those bigger steel lines that are big maintenance issues and big liabilities for you. This is fuzzy, I realize, but these colors here kind of show you where we were looking at replacing things. The looping that we had talked about adding that we're not doing would have come in down around here, adding some additional piping here and some around here. And those are just really difficult, expensive places to construct because you're crossing the highway and things. And they don't add a significant value at this time. So here's the cost. And it's a lot. And these costs are assuming no grant money whatsoever. This would be fully funded with loan funds. So we have to understand that, and that there are grant programs that the city could be looking into that have available. But we talked about doing this in 2 phases. In this first phase, taking care of kind of those critical components from that DDQ plan and get the supply and the control, so the new filter and the control requirements taken care of, and then upgrading your storage so you have some additional capacity there available for you. That cost is about $975,000, which comes out to a cost per user of $19.20 a month. The second phase of that could be the pipeline replacement cost, which is about $250,000, which comes out to about $5 per user per month.
Question.
Yes?
When you said the subtotal was $975,600 and the cost was $19, is the interest factored into that
It
19?
is.
Okay, you didn't say that. So.
Yes, the interest is factored in for a 30-year loan. So that would bring the total project cost to $1.16 million and a total project cost per user of $24.20 per month. Again, without any grant funding and including the interest. So that's what I've got. I'd like to answer any questions you might have now, or.
Are you going to be digging up roads, and where's the replacement cost for paving them?
That cost is included as part of the pipeline costs. Any place where a pipeline was in a road, we add some additional cost in there for the surface repair and the work that would be done to fix that.
And most of that pipe replacement is done in the phase 2. So most of the early work will be done up at the plant.
Yeah.
I was just thinking, this pH tester deal, and we're talking about new controls, does the SCADA equipment that would come with this new thing, would that have that?
We
I
should,
mean-
yeah, we should talk about that. I think that's definitely, we can talk with DEQ. I'm not sure how critical it is that you need to replace that right now. It's definitely something we could do as part of the project potentially. So we can talk with them and
Okay.
see that might be something that makes sense to do. That way everything, if it's tied together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes?
Robert Moore, I live across the street of Wellington. A couple of questions, and you talked a little bit about, I have a couple of questions on two different issues. The fire flow, we had discussed when I sat on council, discussing about increasing the line size and reducing the standpipes that we have. We have a number of regular hydrants that are on bigger lines, and then we have these standpipes that have to be activated with a key valve and things like that. I'm kind of curious if the city is interested in maintaining that now that they've annexed into a fire district and won't have their own fire department. If the facility plan still needs to cover the cost of upgrading the hydrant system, and my question would be, is the burden going to be on the city and the city residents, the taxpayers, to constantly pay for maintenance of a system that's servicing water supply for an outside fire district? Because there will be cost of it not only improving the line size, but then removing all the standpipes and upgrading into city fire hydrants so that we can get greater fire flow and capacity like that. For me, I don't know why this burden has to be on the taxpayers of the citizens to pay for certain infrastructure upgrades to provide an outside fire district. I believe that the cost should be on that fire district to help improve the maintenance and maintain that year after year after year. Because the city is going to be responsible for budgeting for valve replacements year after year on a system and furnishing a water supply. And I'd be curious what the city's plan is with the fire supply system. I don't know if that makes sense.
I can address part of that. The line replacement programs that have been recommended in the plan do increase the line size in some of those areas and do improve the fire flows at some of the peripheral areas. As far as the long-term replacement costs, I'll have to defer that question to the city.
Looks to me like the cost is the same no matter who does the firework. I don't see where that's a concern. That's in addition to anything else.
The benefit of those standpipes and this sort of thing are to the residents here. And as far as I can see, the first thing we look at is, it's probably our responsibility, do we want them or not? It's not the fire district's responsibility. The fire district's only providing the mechanisms and this sort of thing, and it's a convenience to them to look out this sort of thing. So, I don't know, it's a question we might pursue, but looks to me like it's still a city responsibility.
I think it is in all cities.
It is.
So I think it doesn't really matter who is providing fire protection. If the city wants hydrants, then
The city wants
it
hydrants.
benefits the city residents. And we have to pay for it. We're paying for it, right? We'll pay for it either way.
Those hydrants would not help anyone that was in the old fire district before we annexed, so it's strictly a benefit to the East Coast residents.
Yes, it is, and it also has an effect on what your fire insurance is going to do because of how close you are to hydrants and this sort of thing, and it has a bearing on that.
We have Sam Owen with us. I'd like to know if you guys have any comments.
The only thing that I would comment on is
Just
that,
identify yourself.
Oh.
for the tape.
Bob Wathen, Fire Chief, San Juan Fire District. There were only two fire flows that Doug Young reported to me. One was down on, for Holiday Shores, and the other one was for the hotel, which is not even considered. As far as your rating, if you can put a standard fire hydrant within 1,000 feet of every residence, then that's going to help your rating. Now, I don't know what the spacing is on your 2-inch or 2.5-inch. And I didn't see on the plan where the standard fire hydrants were going to be included. But if that can be put into the plan, if you're going to be replacing your lines, certainly do it.
And there is, within the public drinking water rules, this is Katie with DEQ, there's a requirement that if you have a fire hydrant attached to a water line, that water line needs to be 6 inches in size. So I'm assuming that will be addressed during the design phase of that. And we also require that the local fire authority put in writing that you have the appropriate storage or the storage requirements so that you can meet those requirements if you are deciding to offer fire flow.
So that money, there was some numbers in your $250,000 that was covering some of the hydrants
Yes.
and some of the location of the hydrants and stuff like that. Do we have a plan on where those hydrants are, or just the assumption is where they are now?
Correct. Where they are now, yes.
And
It
so,
just-
and you're aware of her requirement, the 6 inch, and so that was in
Correct.
that number, so that's all covered in that number?
As far as I know, St. Moen has no requirement for fire hydrants. So if we want fire hydrants, then we pay for fire hydrants to furnish them. There is not a requirement that we have them.
True. Go ahead, Ian.
Did you not say you're just gonna replace the 4-inch lines?
Gotta get these.
4-inch and larger.
But you are gonna make those 6-inch lines?
Correct, correct.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure clearly that I'm understanding that as this process goes, the city and the residents will be financially obligated to burden the cost of taking out all the standpipes as they are now and the valves that go along with them in the process of upgrading and purchasing brand new city hydrants, because those hydrants are expensive, and I wonder if city council has taken in cost of those hydrants within the 1,000 feet. Because that should definitely be included in this.
Is that in your vote?
That is not.
The only ones that you're proposing to upgrade are the ones that are on the 6-inch line increase.
Right, they would, any that are connected on any lines, we would be replacing.
Right, that would be upgraded.
Correct.
Not all at the same time.
Correct.
I think we gotta remember too, East Hope is always borne the cost of the water. And I don't see that it being any different.
Do we have any estimate on the number of hydrants we're speaking?
I don't know that off the top of my head. You do have it available. I just,
Yes.
I can give you a ballpark figure.
55.
Well, I counted from School Road there at the bottom, I believe up to Ellsport, and included 9 just on the main street. And the current standpipes as they are, they don't flow, I don't believe, as I've told Bob Watson, to pull anything greater than 700 gallons a minute off of it, or it will collapse the line. And I think with city hydrants, you could probably reduce the amount of number that you would need in that stretch to anywhere from 5 to 7, and they could be placed better.
Michelle, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm Pat Weisslein, 62 Lookout Drive. We are going to continue with the chlorine treatment. Okay.
it's a requirement as part of the surface water.
Okay, are there alternatives to that? For example, is Hope using a different treatment? I understood they did, but are you using chlorine?
No, we use Myox, which is a chlorine generator. It makes chlorine out of salt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's still a sodium hypochlorite
Oh,
kind
it
of a
is,
solution.
okay.
Less toxic to the equipment.
Okay.
Yeah, a little easier to handle.
But with our new system, we shouldn't be getting the spikes that we're getting.
Correct, we'll get everything automated as part of the upgrades, so that things will hopefully be a little bit more consistent and level.
Yeah.
Because, right now, we did talk about that a little bit last time, I know that it's really tough to, the feedback takes a really long time to get, so when they realize that the level's too high, it takes a couple of days before it gets turned down, and so, yes, that will get addressed as part of those control upgrades.
And Pat, there seems to be a difference in the last few years on those spikes. Because I can remember when you never tasted chlorine or water. And now quite often you do.
Quite often.
Quite often.
Strong, yeah.
Right.
Undrinkable, actually, yeah.
Chlorine's an interesting animal. There's a level where you don't taste it, and below that, there's a point where you do taste it, and above that, you do taste it. So when you're tasting chlorine, it's not necessarily too high, it could be too low, and it's just not at that sweet spot where we don't taste it. And that's hard to chase when you don't have the appropriate feedback in your system. And that will be one of the requirements that I will look at when I go through the plans that are submitted to me for review, to say, make sure we have these redundancies and the feedback so that you get a proportionate amount of chlorine for what you're pumping.
Good, thank you.
We got any more discussion? Anybody, other questions? Well, let's move on, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, let's move on to new business F, Sam Mullen Fire District Report on annexation progress. George or Bob, you want to take over on that?
Bob Watt, the fire chief, San Ramon Fire District. I talked to the state today, the tax commission. His name was Craig. He said that he has all the information sitting on his desk. He has not issued the approval letter yet, but he said he does not see any problems with it. So he says as far as he can tell, it's done.
And is there anything that the city of East Hope needs to attend to from the perspective of the San Ramon Fire District at this point?
As far as, I had Jake sign a letter for Bonner Communications, because you are in our primary response now. So they were instructed that if Hope East Hope is toned, East Padre is also toned. And we know that goes to both cities, but right now our concern is East Hope. So we will respond for your protection.
Is there anything else that we need to get for you or do for you?
Well, the only thing I would question is what's happening with the Hope East Hope, and I don't know whether you're going to address that
Yes, we are.
for the fire department.
I can report on the annexation process. I talked to the State Tax Commission today, and they have the annexation, and it was done for December, so it's grinding through the process, and it's done. The State Tax Commission, all they have to do is assign taxing districts to our county treasurer and the planning department, so that's all being done. But we are officially annexed.
Okay. Well, I guess moving on then.
We're back up to B now. We're back up to B.
Yeah. Request for qualifications received from new planning and zoning administrator.
We only received one.
And I did get a call from Lisa today. Lisa Elport, who is with Renee, the one proposal that you received. And she gave me her cell phone number. If anybody has questions, we can put a list together, or if you would like to set up a meeting with her, she'd be glad to meet.
The only thing wasn't that I didn't see it, did she have a hourly fee?
There is a fee schedule. I only got the one copy of it.
How does it all work?
I'd like to make a suggestion, just getting these tonight, we haven't had a chance to dive into any of this. I'd like to set up a workshop as quick as possible, to go over these in depth and call those folks in that bid, if they want to come in and talk to us during that workshop. That's fine.
The attorneys especially, because I'm just like,
Yeah.
so, I mean, I don't
So
know.
we could invite them, we can set a workshop, invite them, and they will hopefully show up. If not, they won't consider it as much, I wouldn't think.
That's good, because while I've gone through, there are some things, like there's, on the attorneys, there's only one that's provided a fee.
No, they've all,
Did they?
yes.
We
Holly
just-
Holly Troxel sent them with every one of their folders.
Yeah.
The others only had the one statement, and that was all that was required.
That's why we need a
was the
workshop.
one
Yeah,
statement.
because it wasn't in the information.
Correct.
What is
And
the
it's
first,
the biggest
based
thing.
on qualifications.
what's the first date we might be able to do that?
What's the first day available for you guys?
Right, the sooner the better, we need to get this done and get somebody hired.
So we have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week.
Is there enough time
The
for
soonest
notice?
day would be Thursday. That'd be your special meeting.
What day is one?
Nope, you don't want to get in trouble, huh? So Friday,
That'd be way past trouble.
What's early, what's?
Friday is,
Early
the
next
mayor's, is Marshall Ogilvy's memorial service on.
so now you're into
How about
next
next
week.
Tuesday?
Tuesday would be fine.
Tuesday's the 21st.
Yes.
And that would give time to notify those people and have them rearrange their schedule.
What time works well?
Same time,
Well, some of them are gonna be coming from Coeur d'Alene, they're not
Yes.
gonna want a late meeting, I would say. As early as, 3:30 or 3.
I don't have any problem. The earlier the better.
Yeah. 3?
So 3 on the 21st?
Yeah.
Are you gonna space them? We've got one planner and 3 attorneys.
So do you want me
A
to
planner first,
planner first?
what, half hour apiece?
We can have them all meet in the other room if you want, and have them come in and do individual interviews.
I hate to do that. 15 minutes to a half hour is plenty.
A half hour.
Yeah, after we've all looked at the information they provided.
So do you want me to invite them in 15-minute blocks?
That'd be good, and they could wait out there if we're not quite completed.
Quite there?
Yeah.
Okay,
So it would be
3:15,
3:15,
3:30,
3:30,
3:45,
Close
and
to
4.
5,
and they're done. Then we could have time after 4. So
To
that'll be
discuss them,
That'll be an
yeah.
agendized meeting that we can actually make a decision of.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll leave it for that, I guess.
21st. That takes care of those 2 items for now.
All right. We didn't see, we're on to D. Already, damage done. This
Damage
is
done to the truck?
city truck and rollover accident and repair or replacement, salvage cost.
So you all had a copy of the estimated, estimate bid for the damage done to the truck. We ended up having an independent adjuster for iCrimp come out and take a look at the truck, go through it, because the original estimate for repairs was $10,748.12. The cash value that iCrimp has given the truck from the independent adjuster is $11,882.67. That is what iCrimp is willing to pay us for the truck, because it is totaled, so they won't, that's what they're willing to give us.
Give me that number again, 8,000?
$11,882.67.
What did we pay for that?
We paid about 17, if I remember correctly, because it was just truck and chassis. Didn't have the flatbed on it. And that was piggybacked off of somebody down south on one of their government contracts that they had. The salvage bid rate for the truck is $1,700. So it's a total. They'll give us the cash value. If we want to buy it back, it's going to cost us $1,700. They'll take that out of the cash value and give us the remaining money, which is about $10,000. It'd be $10,182.67.
Which happens to be enough to fix the fence, certainly.
It does. The big thing on the truck is currently the driver's door is dented in to the point that the window does not come down, which is a critical thing when snowplow, being able to get that window down to be able to see. The other, the other big thing on it that needs to be addressed is the headache rack, which is the roll bar on the flatbed, has been pushed back and over, which needs to be fixed, because that's why the truck survived as well as it did. It took a lot of the brunt of it.
But we wouldn't have to spend, we wouldn't have to do all that work.
Nope.
We could cut that down from 10,000 to maybe 5 or 6 or
You
whatever.
may even be able to get away with a couple $1,000s to fix the door and the headache rack, depending on what it
Wires
costs.
and stuff like that,
And then,
We have had a little bit of history with that not being wrecked. Hasn't that been wrecked 3 times?
it's been, yeah.
So why fix it up too?
Yeah.
I guess what I would recommend to council to seriously consider is take the offer that iCrimp has given us, buy it back for the $1,700 salvage rate, fix the minimal amount that is necessary on the truck, look at purchasing a smaller, more economical pickup to do the trips back and forth to Sandpoint and any testing that needs to be done in Coeur d'Alene, so that you don't have the wear and tear to the big truck, and save that as your as strictly as your plow truck, so it'll last longer.
Yeah, why was that taken to Coeur d'Alene?
Because that's the city truck. Otherwise,
What did the city have something going on down there? Or?
they tested. They were doing their water testing.
license.
Paul and Marty had their water distribution test and their water training
Did
test
they have to
down.
have the truck for that?
Lifetime transportation.
They have to have transportation. You pay transportation one way or the other.
Uh-huh.
It's a city truck. A lot of cities have their own vehicles that they use to do that.
We might be better off to pay mileage because we don't have a backup plow.
But you can't force a city employee to use their own vehicle.
No.
Can't force them to
Yeah.
do that.
So if you had a secondary rig, a smaller, more economical one, you wouldn't have that risk to your main plow truck either.
Well, I don't object to that necessarily, but it'd have to be something we could pay cash for out of that settlement.
Correct, and
Well, it's
any
not gonna be-
purchases under 25,000, we can outright purchase without going to a quote or a bid process, according to the purchasing rules.
And,
Sorry.
yeah, and the thing is, if we do minimal on this truck, I'm not sure we'd want it to be going to Coeur d'Alene anyway, if it's only doing a minimum to get by with, although we're addressing the safety issues, still it's a plow truck, and that's probably what it ought to be dedicated to in the future.
Because the cost of replacing a plow truck is astronomical. You're looking at
It probably
probably
gets 6,
20.
7 miles a gallon.
Yeah.
And plus, wasn't
If
the
that.
So,
truck paid for out of street funds? Is that?
Correct.
So $10,000 we would get from ICRIP, less about $3,000 for the necessary repairs. That's just about $7,000.
Mhm.
I think you get a nice used 6-cylinder.
So Marty and I have been looking on,
Either.
we looked on Craigslist today briefly. Some of them that we found was an '04 Ford Ranger for $6,900. It had, I believe it was 104,000 miles on it, looked clean. But I mean, there are deals out there if you put some time into it and look.
Question, does it have to be a pickup? Can it be a little SUV?
It could,
They tend to be less expensive.
yeah, I would probably do a truck, that way he has the ability to hook the trailer to it in the wintertime, because he can't hook a trailer to the plow truck in the wintertime
Yeah, with the
because of the
sander hanging
sander, it
down.
hangs too low. So with the truck, he'd have that capability.
And then I think if he needs a.
Yeah, piping or
you know,
something like
some
that.
piping with
Or
depot or something
a
like
rental
that, he needs to have
equipment.
something to carry.
Yeah.
And does this all have to be paid out of the street fund?
No, I would recommend that it's split 50/50 through water.
Because it's
and
used for
streets.
water and.
Correct, and
yeah.
currently, we split the gas tank 50/50, and I think it's used. I think you can equitably split it 50/50 between water and streets.
Well, let's get one thing done, let's take the ICRIP and get the money in and decide. And if you want to, research our options on a used truck,
I'll put that in the form of a motion. I move that we accept the cash value from ICRIP of $11,882.67 and pay or have the salvage value deducted from that for a net to us of $10,182.67. And then instruct staff to start looking for a truck and report back to council at the next meeting. Or sooner, I'll leave it at that, report back to us next week. Not really what I want, but I strike that motion. I'm gonna make it two different parts. First of all, I move that we accept the cash value of $11,882.67 and take the salvage value and pay of $1,700 for a net to us of $10,182, period, or $182.67. Takes care of the money, then we can talk about what we want to do with the truck.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, what authority do we want to give for them to shop for vehicles?
I think they can just go ahead and research, is this discussion or a motion first?
I think you can discuss it.
I think that they ought to be able to just research it and get back to us and just let us know what the alternative, what they're looking at, I mean, what they found.
We'd have to prove that purchase in a meeting, I think, or we could call just a special, quick 10-minute meeting or
You
something.
could, you could call a special meeting, you know, with that
If
24-hour
we find
notice.
something.
If we found something. The other alternative would be, once the truck repairs are done to the plow truck, then you would know how much cash you have left that you're working with. So
Okay, I'll
that-
make another motion, see if it works. I move that we authorize staff and the mayor to take the $10,182.67 and pay for minimum repairs due on the snowplow truck, and the balance to be allocated for the purchase of a small truck, as long as they do not spend any more money than is left over in this. They would have the authority to do it. That gives them the freedom to do it, us not to
Go out and buy the
overspend.
truck?
Yeah.
Well, I don't see a problem in that.
But
Well, let's- we need a motion on-
Yeah,
on second.
I made a motion, now we can discuss it.
Okay, the thing is, we ought to allow them to do that. What if they come back and they say, hey, you know, we've got a better deal, and for 500 more, or 1,000
It
bucks?
takes a meeting.
Yeah, well, I think that we ought to give them that option to look at that.
Well, I think they can
Or
look
do
at
you-
it, but we don't have to let them buy it if it's over the amount.
No, we don't, but if it's that much of
A better deal.
a better deal,
Well, we could consider
then we ought to
that.
look at it.
Otherwise, what's it gonna be, $500 over, $502, $505? I mean,
No, I don't think
Anything
we,
over the,
I
the
think
remaining
anything over
balance
that.
should come back to council and say,
Yes,
hey, we
that's it.
found this, this
Yeah.
looks like a really good deal, but it's slightly over what the
I'm
balance
not
was.
saying I wouldn't go for $200, $300, or $400,
yeah,
Okay.
but that needs to come back to us.
yes.
So, that's discussion, we have a motion on the floor.
All in favor?
Repeat the motion.
Jerry's motion was to authorize staff and the mayor to pay, to have the minimum required work done to the current snowplow truck, and the balance remaining be made available for purchase of a small truck.
The balance, yeah.
Balance
The
remaining
10,000 when
after
you-
the 10,000, after the repairs.
And then if you can't find one and you won't talk to us, call a special meeting.
Exactly, or at the February meeting.
Mhm.
And it was seconded by Bern.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, let's move on then to E, the resolution 121, termination of joint powers agreement letter to the city of Hope with the joint fire department.
This was drafted by our attorney. Is that correct? Christie?
Yes.
It was drafted by our attorney.
Do we have a,
Pardon?
do we have a draft, so this is the resolution having the mayor send the letter. Do we have a draft letter?
We do not. I am looking for contact from council.
Well, this resolution will terminate.
It will, yeah, you know, I mean, you could send a copy of this to the city of Hope. This would be their notification of the 1-year notice. How you proceed, I think,
Well, I know that Hope would like to see that fire department stay technically open during this year. Is that true, Joe?
Yes.
Okay. And I don't personally mind accommodating that, except there is a fact that citizens then would be paying double. So I would like to do that temporarily until we get a new attorney and we can get a legal advice on how to handle that, and also the legal advice on how to split up assets and everything else. But for the moment, leave that fire department open until further notice. That's the best I can vote for tonight, because I don't know. And then I think maybe we can do some negotiating with the city of Hope too, that maybe there's something they would want that would, and they say, okay, you know, we'll take it over, money or something.
I would recommend that the council consider trying to set up a joint meeting between the two cities to discuss
Love to.
how the termination process would work, so that you can work together through that process to keep it
Civil?
civil, to keep us all out of litigation, something, see if you can come to
Well,
some amicable.
and that's why we need our attorney present at that meeting.
Correct.
We need a new attorney first, and then we need to have that attorney study the situation, and we need to have that attorney at a meeting, and maybe Joe and them would want to have an attorney, and so that work this out to everybody's best advantage. But in the meantime, we have got to cancel the agreement.
That's
And start
exactly
that
right.
year rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I talked with Jim McNall today at ICRIM, and his recommendations do it immediately.
Yeah, in hindsight, this is probably something we should have done early on. Because even if we'd have kept the existing fire department here, looking at that agreement, it's needed to be revised. And that is something that maybe we should have looked at a long time ago.
Well, it's a moot point now.
It's a moot point now, but all I'm saying is,
It's not a good agreement. But I think we can be as pleasant as possible to Hope,
Yeah.
And
Well,
also,
before we go into, what and how and all that other kind of stuff, I think we need to pass a resolution, get the letter off to Hope to officially announce that it's been terminated. And then at that point in time, then we need to sit down. And I think we already have the mechanism in place, somewhat in place, in that we call a meeting of the fire board, which is made up of 2 individuals from our city, and there's 2 individuals from Hope.
there won't be a fire board after this.
I said the existing fire board, unless it's dissolved, but I mean, this.
Until it's,
Until the year notice
this
is
is notice
up.
that it's, we're,
We're giving a 1-year notice, so until that year's up, they are
yeah,
still
we
enacting fire.
still have a, we're,
So the acting fire board, and I would also recommend that we consider asking some concerned citizens of Hope and East Hope to also join that group. Possibly, I can see, 5 or 6 people all together to discuss how it would be best to dissolve the fire department. At that point in time, they have no authority to do anything other than simply have the discussion, talk about the assets, look at the numbers, look at possible ways of dissolving it, getting input from both cities, and then bringing that information back to each city's council and saying, here's what we, as a fire board, have come up with. And this is,
I don't wanna do anything till we consult with our attorney.
I think that's too drawn out. I think I'm with the agreement that Hope and East Hope has to have their city councils meet together and begin the discussion.
With their attorneys.
And with our attorneys, because otherwise there will be no
Otherwise,
way,
they'll never get done.
we'll never get it done.
Well, starting tomorrow tonight, the way I understand it is that Sam Owen will respond to anything in East Hope, and the East Hope Fire Department will respond to anything in Hope. Is that everybody's understanding?
Wasn't mine.
What's your understanding?
I thought we were gonna continue the Hope East Hope Fire Department for our discussion, which meant, what this joint powers agreement says, it's gonna run for a year.
Right,
It still exists.
right.
So, the fact that you guys wanted to annex into Sam Owen doesn't do away with that fire department until after a year. So that fire department's still functioning, still responding. That's why I never understood why the rush to do this. Why didn't this take effect a year from now when the other one was dissolved? Why this overlap? What was the big rush? So now we're in this situation of what do? We've got 2 fire departments. This fire department needs to stay running so that we have the opportunity to get our house in order to keep it going after the year. That's the purpose of the year's notice.
I think we all agree that that's what we're shooting for, but I don't want to make that final determination that it fully operates for the next year, which we get into the next budget year without advice from an attorney.
So what you guys told me in the courthouse now is mute.
No,
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 okay.
we just need to get our we need a legal counsel.
I see the East Hope Fire Department still operating for Hope, but not for East Hope. And we still pay the bills.
We're still, all the funding is there, but we don't, we don't need 2 fire chiefs in East Hope, and we don't need, so all of our resources are still
Joe,
available.
you guys
for
are no
Hope.
different. And what we're suggesting is no different tomorrow than it is right today, except that Sam Owen will respond to us. And that cuts down the amount of response for the Hope Fire Department to only you, or to a joint, any help, call for help. We have the problem, in my opinion, we've got a budget for the rest of this fiscal year, although I will not, the $20,000 for new equipment's not gonna be spent, if I got anything to do with it. That money needs to go back to Hope and East Hope, that money, we don't need that right now. it's still, Robert still is running the fire department. Unless our attorney and all of us sit down, we work out something else. Maybe we can work something out where we give you guys more than you deserve now as opposed to a year from now. I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud. We need to sit down and talk about it.
Why didn't you do this a year and a half ago when you decided to annex? Why you leave them out all this time?
Annexation is an entirely different subject than how to handle the split up of that fire department. It's an entirely different subject.
Did you have some input on that? Fire chief, Pope Fire Chief?
I have a question. I have a question, since you're taking questions, past audience comments. I just want to make it very clear so that tomorrow, when I contact the current rosters of the Hope East Hope Volunteer Fire Department, I want to be very specific that you guys are now expecting us to no longer respond to the city limits of East Hope. So that, if that is the case, I need to know that for logistical reasons, for our firefighters to know when and where they respond. If that is the wish, please make a motion, please make it as factual as possible so that tomorrow morning, if my neighbor's house catches on fire, I know just to stand there and watch it. And if there's a call in Hope, that we know to respond over there to Hope, and if we need a mutual aid call, we call for a mutual aid. That needs to be decided right now logistically, because I am tired of wasting my time while you guys try to figure this out. Because you guys are not the ones doing it.
That's exactly what we want, is that correct? That's
Okay,
exactly.
but we cannot do that until we have an attorney and we get legal.
It just was previously stated by Councilman Clemens that that was the
We can
plan.
address him,
Okay.
and for right now,
I
we
think
can
we already
address
said,
him.
already said that.
And that's what we want.
I make a motion that from this
Can I-
minute forward,
Jerry?
One thing we need to address here was the letter that was sent to the dispatch, that needs to be redone and clarified to what you're about to make a motion for, because that's not what was stated in that letter. It was stated Hope East Hope.
East Hope will be,
And-
it's in the package.
And I want to, remind the council and the mayor that you don't speak for the city of Hope when
It's
you,
this one.
send out letters, so.
Suggest that since we leave everything as it is until we.
Well, we have a duplication then in firefighting, and we don't need that.
right, we don't,
As it stands now with both departments responding, it would be like having an automatic aid in place, correct, Bob?
And so what, how does that, what's San Luis Fire Chief have to?
They're gonna-
We're coming if the call goes out. It doesn't matter to us whether Hope East Hope gets the tone first. We're gonna be toned to respond. And we will respond within the city limits of East Hope. And that's basically what the letter says. We're not planning on going into Hope.
and I understand Hope does not want you in Hope.
Correct.
Is that true, Joey, even under a mutual aid?
We're asking if we could call for mutual aid.
We have countywide mutual aid, that wouldn't change. I just need to know what the plan is for tomorrow morning, so I can call and notify people who are wanting to know.
Okay, I'll make a motion that tomorrow morning,
Can I make a suggestion before you make that motion, that you
Do this
do this first?
I'll make a motion that we pass resolution number 121, which is the termination of the joint fire agreement between Hope and East Hope.
This is a roll call vote?
That's a roll call vote, right?
We'll go ahead and do it a roll call vote, but it doesn't need to be, so.
Do I have a second?
Oh, I second it.
So we're just talking about this resolution?
Yes, just this resolution.
So you had a second, so.
All in favor, yeah.
No.
Yeah, Eileen said.
Jerry Clemens,
Aye.
Eileen Platt,
Aye.
Tom Grimm,
Aye.
Vern Flesher.
Aye.
Motion
Now.
carries.
Now, to satisfy a request by Robert Moore, I would move to make it clear to both fire chiefs, Sam Owen and Robert Moore, that starting now, that Hope, East Hope Fire Department is not required to answer a call in the city limits of East Hope unless joint mutual aid is requested. Otherwise, they are not asked to respond in East Hope. I believe that's what they want.
Is that your motion?
Wait a second.
I second.
And now, any questions?
So basically, if there's a fire in East Hope, both departments will be toned, but Sam Owens is the only one that's gonna respond
Unless a mutual aid.
unless Sam Owens asks
Unless
East
there's a
Hope to
mutual
help.
aid call.
And that's the way,
And
that's
Robert will respond in Hope, in the city limits of Hope
right.
only,
And Sam Owens would respond if Robert calls Sam Owens.
and vice versa.
Well, why are you calling Robert and Sam Owen? Why not Bob Watson and Robert, or Hope, East Hope Fire Department? Why are you pointing to Robert? I don't understand that. And you're not calling Bob's name.
Okay, Hope East Hope Fire.
There you go.
Means nothing, I mean, same thing.
Right, just had the question.
Yeah, Robert had the question.
The thing is what this does say is toning Hope and East Hope. And Hope does not want to be toned in that request when they're toning East Hope.
Bob Watson,
Yeah.
there's some logistical things that have to be worked out at Bonner Communications in order to facilitate what Robert's asking for, but it can be done. Right now, I'll be talking with Marcus tomorrow about it, and hopefully they get their addressing right, because we know how sometimes they don't. But for anything that's toned out for East Hope, I'll have them tone Sam Owen first.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts if Hope East Hope gets toned, they would know not to respond unless they're called.
Well, they don't know unless, when he picks up the call. When he picks up the call.
Well, no, he would know not to respond in East Hope unless mutual aid triggered. So I think that's a logistic thing. I don't think we need to argue about that. We've got, Sam Owen takes care of East Hope, and Hope East Hope takes care of Hope, period.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Carolyn Goldberg, Hope City Council. If East Hope is toned, then, and are they now legally required to not respond? Like if they did respond, would then there be some kind of, would that be illegal, or would that be some kind of?
It's not illegal.
If they responded to East Hope?
So they don't want to be, but if they did respond, there wouldn't be any repercussions.
We might not pay stipends. Depends if we didn't ask for it. No, I don't think so. And I talked to Jim McNall today, just kind of was their liability if they didn't respond in East Hope, or Sam Owen didn't respond to Hope, and I said no.
So there's no trouble for two not responding, just for two that are responding?
Yeah, as long as we are fulfilling our agreement, and the resources are available to Hope. That,
We have minutes to reflect all that to protect people. No.
All right, with any further questions?
Well, I guess just a little further discussion on that. Once we, so that Hope knows what's going on, once we have our attorney chosen and we're able to sit down and say, look at all this and, you know, see what you think, then we'll let Hope know and probably set up a meeting.
Yes.
And that'll be sooner than later.
And then also get input from them on how they would like to proceed as far as the solution.
Hope doesn't want us in
Hope.
Now, we've got,
Will that work for you, Joe?
got considerable assets to talk about at some point. We've also got money in reserves and checking account that'll be split. So we'll pay, you know, we'll be responsible for paying the normal bills like we always do. Not gonna buy a truck. 20,000, I would like to see our share of that come back into Hope's general fund to help pay some of these attorney bills that we've been racking up over this. So, we can talk about that later.
Well, there's a lot of stuff to do.
You have a question, Joe?
Nope.
Anything else from you, Bob?
Robert,
I would encourage you guys over this next year to look at your fire ordinances, because those will all have to be changed too. There's a number of ordinances that the city has, specifically for the city fire department, that those will have to be changed and gone over to, and probably reformatted.
Our attorney can advise us.
So you have a motion and a second on the floor.
okay,
Want to read that motion?
Yeah, that's the motion.
Jerry Clemens moved to not require East Hope East Hope volunteers to respond to an East Hope fire call. They are only required to respond to
Unless there's a
Hope
mutual aid
unless
call.
there's a mutual aid call.
And that was seconded?
That was seconded by Vern Flesher.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, we resolved all of that, I guess. We move on to old business. Merchant bonding, water intake system repairs.
We got the letter from,
We did receive a letter from Steve, that he said communications from the bonding agency, particularly Alexander Frederick, stating that they have reviewed all the documentation and are in agreement that Sackett failed to properly complete the original construction work. Which is good. He would like to sit down and have a conference call with Eric Eldenberg, Jeff Jensen with James A. Sewell, and Jim Woodward with Apex Construction to go over the cost of the repairs and the changes that were made subsequent to the faulty bolts. And Steve's recommendation is that that meeting happens first with him, so he can get their responses and be on board and ready to be prepared to negotiate when the time comes, when.
So basically, they're saying now prove the cost, prove your damages.
Correct, and they want to have a conference with those.
Which is one do.
So they
They want to make sure that all of them are a direct result of the faulty bolts.
in other words, when they went up, Apex did the change, did they
Did they
Actually-
modify the system?
improve it?
Yeah.
Did they, oh, well, this should have been done this way, so, you know, we need to do this? Or what did they fix? Did they fix? So if they improved it, then I guess they're trying to say we don't owe that.
They
If
don't
they-
require, yeah.
If they just fixed it, then they say, okay, we owe that.
They're trying to juggle
Yeah,
and
good wiggle and worm.
make sure that everything that we've submitted in cost are a direct result of those faulty bolts.
What did they do that was different than what it was before?
There was some slight piping modifications that were done that I don't know if was a direct result.
So those costs, I see their point. All
They
they
wanted to.
really have to pay for is to put new bolts back where they were.
And the
Clean out.
results of the damage done
The damage.
subsequent to that,
But
which was
anything
extensive.
that was not engineered properly that had to be fixed at that time, looks to me like our engineers ought to be paying for that.
But I guess the question in front of you is, would you like Steve to sit down with these people, discuss their answers first prior to having the conference set up with Merchant Market?
I think so. It's
That
more
way he
money,
goes
but
in well-educated.
I think we have to.
I think you have to, because if they say something that, oh, well, we just, go ahead and approve this, because it wasn't done right, then, you know, that lawyer could really find something to hang his hat on. And at least our lawyer could say, you know, we really don't want to say that, say it was not engineered or something, you know, it wasn't engineered right.
I think Steve needs talking. Do we need a motion to tell him to do that?
I think you should probably make a motion that you give Steve, that you authorize Steve to set up that, just because our attorney fees are so high this year, and we are over budget, so it is an additional cost.
Well, we have had tremendous legal fees as a result of this San Juan thing.
This is out of water though, so
I
it's
know.
still over.
I know, but, oh, that's gotta stay in water, doesn't it?
Yes.
Okay,
And-
so that won't help us. The only thing that might help us with the legal fees is the $20,000 truck we're gonna buy, going back to the general fund to help cover all that.
Right.
I'll make a motion, see where it goes. I'll make a motion, we authorize our attorney, Stephen Smith, to meet with,
James A. Sewell.
James A.
Eric
Sewell,
Ellenberg.
Apex Construction, and Apex Construction to discuss this question.
Discuss it, and also to set up the call.
The conference call would be set up
Conference
after
call.
that.
That would be the conference.
No, Alexander Frederick is the one that wants to set that conference call up with
Okay.
those after.
I withdraw that motion. Somebody want to help me, Michael?
Well, I guess the motion is for Steve to have a
Pre-meeting.
pre-meeting with Apex Construction and Sewell prior to, pre-meeting prior to the eventual meeting,
The conference call.
conference call with
Alexander Fried.
Alexander
Friedrich.
Friedrich.
Thank you, got it right. I'll second that discussion. Again, I think you got it right.
Okay, all in favor?
Well, let's see if there's, did he get it back, Christie? Okay. Now we can vote. Now we're ready.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, moving on to staff reports. Planning and zoning. We got something from Ryan.
So, a certificate of occupancy was issued to the Merritt residents at 301 School Road, should be School Road, not Schoolhouse.
Schoolhouse.
Was approved, and the Costanza permit has been extended through June of this year, at the request of the landowner. We have 4 outstanding active permits, the Walker residence down here in Wellington, the Costanza one that has been suspended for the winter, the Turnbull addition that we approved just a month or so ago, and then the Wheeler permit for the deck replacement up on Spring Street. I've received a package of archive files from Brian, that those were done, and this is his last report.
Okay. Move on to fire, I guess we got nothing for fire. Streets, we got anything for streets or? Pretty well.
So we got nothing from,
We did not get a written report. It was my understanding from talking to him that he was gonna give a verbal report, but
When he left.
he left, so. We do not have anything for that.
Well, we got streets, and we got anything for streets or nothing? No. What about good old water?
I do have something for water.
We always
That's all
have
we've been
something.
talking about.
I know.
We always have something for
We
water.
always have something for water. So, we've been talking about our water loss for some time now. And when we started the meter reading process earlier last year, and keeping track of how much water was produced, how much water was sold, and what the percentages was our loss. And we started out fairly high. We had, it was about 56% water loss. And through the leak detection process and repairs, we were supposedly able to get this down. For our lowest percentage of loss was in the month of July at 25.6% water loss. And
Which
since
may be
then,
as good as you're gonna get.
since then, it has progressively been increasing. And the last couple of months have been in the 60%, 60 to 70% loss range. And we have been racking our brains and looking at everything and going through, you know, the lines and trying to figure out where that bump up has come from. Knowing that it was still a possibility that the source meters could have been part of that, which we're in the process of replacing. And then Paul Madden one day, after looking at this report, which did not have this last column in it, he got looking at it and he started figuring it out. And the water loss is in direct proportion of what's sold to what was produced. But if you look at the gallon difference between what was produced and what was sold, up until the last month, it's been about 1 million gallons. So whatever our issue was, has always been our issue. The leaks that we fixed have been bonuses.
So we got something major.
So we have an issue going on. The good news, so that was the bad news. The good news is, in trying to replace these source meters, Marty's been learning a lot, and the butterfly valve that sits just prior to the source meter was originally put in by Dill Electric. We've come to find out that the butterfly valve wasn't actuating properly, and we got a new valve, and we are in the process of ordering a new actuator, because when that actuated that butterfly valve to open,
False reading.
no, it's a quarter turn valve, so it would open a quarter turn, let water pass through, but when that valve signaled it to close, the actuator signaled it to close, it wasn't closing completely. And it was letting about 25 gallons a minute by that system. Now, Paul didn't realize that the contact basin was getting 2,000 gallons an hour extra when that valve was shut off. And he didn't see it going through the overflow, so he didn't assume that that's what it is. But Paul goes up and reads those source meters at peak hourly demand in the morning. So the system is using enough water that it's not going out the overflow. So we're pretty
So
sure
that's why he didn't see it.
That's why he didn't see it. And it's rare that they go up during midday when it's,
So you're pretty sure it's not a big broken line?
we're pretty sure that that's what it is. Yeah. So once we get the actuator replaced, and that meter online, we should know within a couple days, once that meter goes online. So, that is a big thing. The actuator and the valve were expensive. Everything I've come to see that deals with water seems to be expensive. That repair is going to be about $1,000 for the actuator and the valve. So, but good news, we think we found a big percentage.
Major source, yeah.
you know, it's
So what's that
it's been
water
a
do?
bane of our
Yeah, and all
existence
that
trying to
money on
trace
leak
all of it,
detectors.
yeah.
and-
So what does that water do, is it goes out the,
So treated water is being flushed back to
But
Strong
back to,
Creek.
back to the
back
creek.
into the creek?
Yeah, process.
You guys have something else you wanna talk to us about?
Yeah, when you've got a second?
Yeah, we passed
No,
it by, we
meetings.
can go back and
Yeah. Yeah, well, go ahead, Bill, then.
Go ahead.
What you got, guys?
The fire ordinances that Robert mentioned, is it possible for me to get a copy of those ordinances?
Of course. When can you have
There,
it?
there are multiple different ones, I'll pull them together. Do you want me to email you,
Sure.
or do you want?
You can email.
Okay.
That
Okay.
works.
Okay,
That's
And you
it.
didn't give us any advice that we need. And you guys, question two, since we're already opening that discussion, you guys, you have all the maps, all the addresses, all the names, everything?
We have some. The map, the one map that I have of East Hope really doesn't show everything, so I'm working on getting.
You could get that from our GIS department if you don't have.
I actually have a map in Rhino that is set up, that I can send you, and you
Okay.
can take into like Glahey's and have printed, that'll have the the
Mhm.
addresses
Okay.
and the homes on it,
And then,
street names.
does it show all the hydrants?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I can turn on layers so that only, so you need to let me know if you want addresses, names of the houses, and hydrants, because I can take layers on and off. on it,
Yeah, I
'cause
think
it shows
just,
water lines
just
and
the addresses, we don't need the names,
stuff. Okay,
just because that's how they tell us, is just to an address.
okay.
Do you have aerial photographs? Because you could get those, our GIS department has aerial photographs that are pretty good resolution.
Okay,
If you want all of those, so that you can really zero in and see where things are. And you know where GIS is in our first floor of our building.
Yep.
And any mapping you need, they've got.
okay.
Anything you need at all, just Christie will give you whatever you need,
Okay.
more records.
All right.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
okay, well, I guess I gotta go.
I only have a couple more things. In water, Marty and I will be attending a budget training workshop put on by Idaho Rural Water in Sandpoint on February 4th. And then Paul Madden will be going through his license review class March 4th, 5th, and 6th. They've moved it from Lewiston up to Coeur d'Alene, so it'll be much nicer. It's a 3-day class. So that will be working towards his actual license. He currently has
Marty's already licensed.
He is. He's licensed in operation and distribution. Paul Madden has his operator in training license, which is good for 2 years. You have to complete the process in 2 years to, because he can't renew that one. He has to move up to his actual license. So, and then the only thing I have for clerks is you have received your audit report copy, and they will be doing a phone conference. It's in your box out there. They will be doing a phone conference with this February's meeting, and hopefully they're not too terribly long-winded.
Not to get ahead of that, but since you brought it up, I noticed that we really haven't corrected any deficiencies
Some of the deficiencies will always be there because we're a small
because of
city.
the size of the stuff.
Yeah.
Well, there are steps we could take to correct those deficiencies, I think, by considering having an outside accountant come in once in a while to do things to correct those. Something, it costs some money, but it doesn't cost as much as hiring another person to have 2 people here. So we could correct those, and we might want to consider that in our next budget, because we keep getting these deficiencies based on one person doing everything and nobody looking over it.
And I guess the other thing,
Sorry, go ahead.
is would we correct some of the deficiencies by having an outside billing source for the water bill?
The water we're actually
That wasn't
very
a
good at,
deficiency, was it?
no, it wasn't a deficiency, because there is two of us now on the water. The checks that come in are recorded by Ruth and deposited by Ruth, and then I record them into the revenue, so there's a cost
So we're
on
good
that.
there now.
And so, all revenue comes in, she reports all revenue, I report it into the revenue book, so there's a cost now of that, which is good.
But, you know, we might talk to our auditors next February
And
and
ask
say,
them.
if we allocated some funds to an outside CPA, or it wouldn't have to be a CPA, probably a qualified bookkeeper, would that clear up some of these deficiencies?
I know that.
It might be worth it, it might not.
Tom,
Oh, used to be mayor of Clarkport?
yes,
Yeah.
Tom Shields.
Tom Shields.
Does that for some.
He does that, and he's close,
Yes,
and he understands cities.
correct.
So I don't know if it would come in once a quarter or do something, or, you know, things over. But, you know, that's something we can consider in the next year's budget. We don't have any money for it this year that I know of. And maybe, I don't know if they reduce their fee if we did run that. Might.
But they might, so.
Because sometimes, if you have, like the county has, you know, CPAs on staff, and they prepare so much for the auditor that
Yeah.
the auditor doesn't have to charge us so much. So are there things we could have a guy like Tom Shields prepare that would cut
Reduce
down the
their
cost of
work.
this audit?
Right.
Yeah. And if so, then, you
That's
know,
probably a bigger thing.
And a lot of, most of the reports that they need, or a lot of them, I've been generating, and it's been a learning process, obviously, since our last audit was in June of this last year, and we didn't have a lot of months in between to implement all of the new ones. And since this audit, we've actually started a couple new reports that will be generated.
it's our obligation to cut these deficiencies down.
Yeah.
We need to.
Okay. Well, we're all set. You want to adjourn the meeting, and next council meeting will be February 11th?
Actually, the 21st.
Next regular council meeting
Yeah,
will be
next regular.
February.
21st, otherwise 21st will be a special meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. You can have that.
I think it's in here.
And I think this is.
Hey, George.
Hey.
Why are you recording?